You know that moment when your chest tightens, your throat closes, and you think, if I say this, if I do this, everything could change. Yeah, at that one, do this once. Do the hard thing once. Say the honest thing once. Let yourself be seen once. Tell the truth, even if your voice shakes, just once. Because the first time you show up as your whole self, you'll realize you weren't breaking. You were breaking free. Now, listen. Vulnerability, it's not weakness. It's courage on display. It's the moment you decide that pretending is more painful than showing up as you are. And, yes, it's terrifying, but so is staying small. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need one breath of boldness, one moment of truth, one sacred pause where you choose to be brave over comfortable. Do this once. Have the conversation. Say you're sorry. Ask for help. Raise your hand. Cry if it's real. Laugh if it's loud. Be human. And let them see it. Because the moment you do it once, you've built the evidence that you can. That it didn't destroy you. That your truth has power. We think resilience is built in the aftermath, but it starts the moment you decide to show up without the armor. And if you do it once, you'll do it again. Not because it's easier, but not to change your whole life, just to start with one moment of truth. Do it once, and then do it again. You don't need a map. You just need to take the first step with your heart wide open. We've been taught in small and subtle ways that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of, that it's soft. No, fragile. Exposed. From childhood, we're told not to cry in public, not to show fear, to suck it up, be strong, smile when it hurts. And somewhere along the way, we start to believe that vulnerability and weakness are one and the same. But here's the truth, the real, hard, soul-shaking truth. Vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength. It is strength. It's the truest form of courage we have. Because there's nothing braver than showing up with your heart wide open when you don't know how you'll be received. There is no greater act of grit than saying, this is who I am. This is what I feel. This is what I need in a world that tells you to stay guarded. Vulnerability is standing in the middle of the emotional storm without armor, without certainty, without control, and saying, I'm still here. That's not weakness. That's emotional endurance. That's what real strength looks like. And let's be honest, it's messy. Vulnerability isn't polished or poetic while it's happening. It's not carefully curated. It's snotty-nosed, trembling hands, voice. It's the moment you hit send on the email that terrifies you. It's the conversation where your palms sweat and your stomach turns, but you keep going. It's saying, I love you first, or asking, do you still love me? It's not dramatic. It's deeply human. And yet, we resist it like our lives depend on it, when in reality, our wholeness depends on it. Part of the reason vulnerability is so misunderstood is because we've confused it with oversharing or emotional dumping. But they're not the same. Vulnerability isn't about being unfiltered with everyone. It's about being deeply honest with the people who've earned the right to hear your story. It's about alignment. It's when your actions, your words, and your values line up in real time. You're not performing. You're showing up fully. And that kind of congruence, it doesn't just require courage. It is courage. What we often miss is that vulnerability is the birthplace of every single meaningful human experience. Creativity, connection, innovation, love, trust, they all start with uncertainty. There is no creativity without the risk of failure. No intimacy without the risk of rejection. No leadership without the risk of being wrong. If you want more connection in your life, more impact in your work, more meaning in your days, there's no path that avoids vulnerability. It's the gateway, not the obstacle. I've spent over 2 decades studying shame, courage, and connection, and I can tell you with certainty, the people who live the most wholehearted lives aren't the ones with the least fear. They're the ones who've decided to lean in. They've learned that vulnerability isn't about being fearless. It's about being honest with your fear, owning it, and choosing to show up anyway. They don't armor up before hard conversations. They soften. Not because it's easy, because it's the only way to keep their hearts intact. We live in a culture that worships certainty. We applaud people who are always confident, always composed, always together. But real strength isn't found in having all the answers. Real strength is found in saying, I don't know, but I'm here. Found in admitting when we're hurt, when we're lost, when we're unsure. It's found in choosing truth over image. There's a reason the most powerful leaders, the most impactful voices, the most enduring relationships all have vulnerability at their core, because nothing can grow in fake. And everything beautiful takes root in real. We often wait for the perfect moment, the right plan, the flawless script. We tell ourselves we'll speak up when we're more confident, take the risk when the timing is better, set the boundary once we feel more ready. But the truth is, readiness isn't a prerequisite for change. It's a byproduct. Courage doesn't wait for clarity, it creates it. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is simply start. Not perfectly. Not all at once, just once. That a once might be so small it feels invisible. A single sentence, a single truth, a single choice, but it's not about size. It's about direction. Doing the right thing once, telling your story honestly once, standing up for yourself once, asking for what you need once begins a ripple. That's how the tide turns. We think transformation happens in grand, sweeping gestures, but in reality, it starts in the quiet, trembling moment when we choose ourselves. When we choose truth, even if just for a second. We underestimate the power of beginnings because we're wired for results. We want to know what comes next. We want the guarantee. But vulnerability doesn't come with promises. It comes with presence. It says, be here now. One honest word. One small step. That's all it asks of you. It doesn't demand that you leap the whole distance. It asks that you take a single, meaningful stride toward what matters most. And if you do that just once, you've changed the landscape of your life. There's a myth we buy into that. If we can't do it all, then it's not worth doing. But the truth is, the first time you speak, your truth might not land perfectly. The first time you try something new might not feel powerful. You might stumble, second guess, feel awkward. That doesn't mean it wasn't meaningful. It means you're human. And if you can learn to see those first steps not as proof of inadequacy, but as proof of courage, everything shifts. It's not about being flawless. It's about being willing, The beauty of starting once is that it builds evidence. It's no longer hypothetical. You did it. You were brave. You took the risk, and no one can take that from you. That one moment becomes a mile marker. It's something you can look back on when fear rises again and say, I've done this before. And from that one act of courage, momentum begins to grow. Your nervous system starts to believe a new story, not one of failure or avoidance, but of bravery and truth. That's how we rewrite our narratives, not in epiphanies, in actions. It doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't even have to be noticed by anyone else. The most revolutionary things we do are often witnessed only by ourselves. The first time you forgive someone and don't tell them. The first time you sit with discomfort instead of numbing it. The first time you hear your inner critic and instead of believing it, you speak back with compassion. These are the small revolutions that change everything. Because they're built on integrity, not performance. And let me say this. Starting once doesn't mean you'll never feel fear again. It doesn't mean the road ahead will be smooth. But it does mean you've proven to yourself that you can act in the presence of fear, that you're no longer letting fear make all your decisions. And when that becomes your baseline, that truth is stronger than comfort. You become unstoppable in the quietest, most grounded way. You don't have to shout. You shout out. There's something sacred about the first time you do the hard thing, the first time you go against your pattern, the first time you say no when everything in your body is trained to say yes, the first time you set a boundary or speak up in the meeting. That moment may feel small to the outside world, but on the inside, it's seismic. It's the sound of old narratives cracking, of inherited beliefs starting to unravel, of you becoming more yourself than you've ever allowed. We talk a lot about change, like it's this long, drawn-out, perfectly mapped journey. But so often, it begins in the split second when you choose the hard, right thing over the easy, silent one. Doing the hard thing once, just once, gives you something that no book, no podcast, no motivational quote ever can. It gives you proof. It proves to your nervous system that you can survive discomfort. That the world doesn't end when you're honest. That your worthiness isn't dependent on everyone liking you. It's evidence that you can be scared and brave at the same time. Because let's be clear, courage isn't about being fearless. Courage is about taking action while your fear rides shotgun. And when you do the hard thing once, you build trust with the person who matters most. You. There's no growth without discomfort. And yet, so many of us have been conditioned to believe that discomfort is dangerous, that it means we're failing, that something's wrong. But discomfort is the space where expansion happens. It's where your life stretches. It's where your old coping strategies get interrupted. That first hard conversation might leave you shaky and exhausted. That first boundary might make your heart race. But under that panic is power, real power. The kind that doesn't need to control others. It just needs to tell the truth. Here's what most people don't realize. Doing the hard thing once doesn't just change your circumstances. It changes yourself. Before that moment, you might still believe the lie that you're too sensitive, too needy, too much, that your silence keeps the peace, that your job is to make things easy for everyone else. But when you step into the hard thing, even once, you begin to unlearn that. You start to see yourself not as someone who needs to be smaller or quieter or easier to love, but as someone who is allowed to take up space, someone who is allowed to need things, someone who is allowed to tell the truth, and it won't be perfect. That first attempt might be messy. You might trip over your words, you might cry, you might walk away thinking, did I screw that up? But let me tell you something. Messy courage is still courage. That moment where you acted from your values instead of your fear, that's not failure. That's not failure. You're not here to impress. You're here to live, and doing the hard thing, even imperfectly, brings you closer to the person you were before the world told you to be quiet, agreeable, and fine when you weren't. People often ask me, but what if I do the hard thing and it doesn't go well? And I say, that's not the right question. The question is, who do I become when I do the hard thing? Because even when the outcome isn't what you hoped for, even when the other person doesn't respond well, or the risk doesn't lead to the reward, you still walk away with something invaluable. Integrity. Alignment. And over time, they add up to a life lived with authenticity, self-respect, and unshakable self-worth. The first time you do the hard thing, it's likely to feel like a test, a trial. You'll second-guess yourself, feel like you don't belong, and wonder if anyone... We let them see us, not the glossy version we try to show the world, but the real, messy, vulnerable version. See show up as their authentic us because it reminds us that we are not. When we hide behind our walls, when we put on masks of perfection or invulnerability, we cut ourselves off from genuine human connection. We keep others at arm's length, and in doing so, we also keep ourselves. It is the choice to live authentically, to be real, to take risks, and to connect with others in a way that fosters true belonging. Vulnerability is not about being weak or fragile. It is about being brave and bold enough to show up as ourselves, with all our imperfections, scars, and flaws. Fear is a powerful emotion, and it can be paralyzing if we let it control us. It can stop us from pursuing our dreams, taking risks, or showing up as our true selves. But when we begin to see fear as a natural part of growth, it